We've also had a few questions related specifically to the Canterbury earthquakes. These come from Matt, Mal and Maria. So Matt lives in Christchurch eastern suburbs and would like to know if the impacts of an alpine fault earthquake are likely to be similar to those he experienced in the Canterbury earthquakes. Mal lives in Timaru and would like to know if the earthquakes she has felt recently are related to the Canterbury earthquakes. And does Timaru have any known faults like Christchurch? And also, could Mount Horrible become active again? And lastly, from Maria in Rakaya, she asks, in the maps of the Canterbury quakes, there is a big area that doesn't have any quakes. Why is that? Now, I thought I'd open this up to Rob and Caroline and Tom, perhaps. Would you like to help us answer these questions?
Sure, maybe I can start, and then just to give a bit of background from the seismology perspective. So that was the question on the whether the recent Timaru earthquakes were related to aftershocks from the Canterbury sequence. As a seismologist, I would say that the distance of those earthquakes and also the comparison of the activity, the seismicity, the current seismicity compared to what the seismicity was prior to the earthquake would tell me that these are not related to the Canterbury earthquakes, that they are part of the normal background seismicity for New Zealand. Now, in terms of the faults that these are occurring on, I'm gonna pass it on to Rob, our expert geologist today.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah. The team that I work in is an earthquake geology team, and one of the things that we manage is the New Zealand Active Faults database, and it's an online resource that we have at GNS. So I looked that up the other day. Tried to find the area of Mount Horrible, and I found it. It's fairly close to Timaru. There aren't any active faults right around Mount Horrible itself or near Timaru. If you go a little bit further afield, there's an active fault related to the Dalgety Hills. And if you go a little bit further afield, there are active faults in the Waitaki Valley, kind of low activity faults in general. It's not a part of the country I look at a lot, so that probably means that there isn't so many active faults in the South Canterbury area. I want to pass on those other questions to the next person.
Shall I do the liquefaction one, shall I? Liam, get yourself ready because I'm going to hand over to you at some point. Okay, so I'll start out by saying I'm not a liquefaction specialist, but in terms of Eastern Christchurch, we know that the conditions there make it really, really susceptible to liquefaction occurring during earthquakes. And so during the Canterbury earthquake sequence, there was a number of earthquakes which triggered liquefaction to varying extents and severities. Obviously, the worst was with the Christchurch earthquake on the 22nd of February in 2011. And when we're thinking about what might happen with the Alpine fault, the level of shaking or the intensity of shaking that we expect in Eastern Christchurch will be much lower than what experienced with the Christchurch earthquake. But the key difference is that the duration of shaking will probably be much, much longer, probably in the order of minutes. So what that means is that those liquefiable soils, they sort of get charged, and they can eventually lead to liquefaction occurring under those conditions. So even though there's less shaking, the duration of shaking is longer, so it means liquefaction can occur. So the most recent studies that I'm aware of suggest that the extent and severity of the liquefaction will probably be lower than what we experienced in the Canterbury earthquake sequence during an alpine fault or immediately after an alpine fault earthquake. And some important difference, that's from a sort of geological perspective or the physical mechanism. But we've also done some great things where we've got the red zone in place, which has pulled out a lot of development and infrastructure and people's homes from areas which are highly susceptible to liquefaction. So that'll substantially reduce the potential impacts. And then as part of the SCIRT program, or the big Stronger Christchurch infrastructure rebuild, a lot of the horizontal infrastructure has been rebuilt with much stronger, in many cases, much more ductile materials that will hopefully withstand future liquefaction events much more effectively. But I'm absolutely traipsing into areas that Liam is an expert in. So I'll stop talking and hand over to him, because he's definitely the guy that we need to be hearing from on this.
I actually don't think I could have said it any better myself. I think, yeah, you've done a good job at describing what we might affect. So we would expect that to be less, and yeah, by moving away from the zones that we've seen liquefy over and over again, which in the red zone you may see that liquefaction occur in that areas, but you're no longer affecting property and people in the same way as you did in the past, that you've taken a step back outwards. And because of the increase in the construction standards of infrastructure and also of residential houses to ensure that they're going to perform to a standard that was higher than what we'd expect prior to the Canterbury earthquake sequence. So nothing more from me. Very, very succinct answer.